All right, welcome 2021. Who is glad to be done with 2020? See ya, don't let the door hit you on the way out, 2020. Well, on second thought, maybe. It is time for a new year. New beginnings, new resolutions. I've got a couple of my own for this year, and the first one Elise suggested, and it's for our whole family. We agreed that we're going to try and take our family out for a hike at least once a month this year. We've already got one under our belt. We went to Kings Mountain National Park and did about a 4-mile hike on Sunday. And so one down, 11 to go. I've got a personal one too. One of my sons asked for a weighted jump rope for Christmas. And I looked at that and was looking at some things online and I got intrigued. So I'm going to try my hand at jump roping for a little while. And after a couple of days of watching tutorials and giving it a try, I've already learned two things. One, I've learned that jump roping does not hurt my joints like I was afraid it would, so that's good. But secondly, I've learned that I'm nowhere nearly as coordinated as I used to be, so we'll see how that one lasts for the long haul. Most of our resolutions have to do with taking better care of ourselves, right? Eat better, exercise more, quit some bad habit. Those are all wonderful practices. We need to hit the reset button every once in a while to keep our motivation up to form healthy and productive lifestyles. Well, I have one more suggestion for you for a New Year's resolution. Really, it's more of an UnResolution. And the reason why I'm suggesting this is because I think you'll find that it will make you happier and more content with your life. But it won't sound like it at first. So let me introduce it through the experience of the Apostle Paul in 2 Corinthians chapter 11. Paul lists a whole bunch of things about himself that are, well, they're his credentials. He could check all the boxes for why the church should honor him and follow his teaching. Plus, he had endured all kinds of suffering for the sake of the ministry of the gospel. So he was tried and tested and found worthy. But then Paul says something completely out of the blue and unexpected. In 2 Corinthians 11, verse 30, he says, "If I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness." Wait, what? The secret to Paul's contentment about himself was not his credentials or his accomplishments. It was that his weakness made him happy. Well, how does that work? Well, how do you get a strong, healthy body? You work at it. You watch what you eat and drink. You discipline yourself to exercise with a balance of both strength and cardio. You even train yourself to rest well and to de-stress. You never say, "I'm going to get stronger by being weak." But that is exactly what Paul says you need to do for your spiritual health. And then in chapter 12, Paul goes on and he says that God had given him some kind of physical thorn in the flesh. And he had prayed over and over for God to heal him from this. But God's response to his prayers in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9 was this: "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." In other words, God does not wish to take away your weaknesses. He wishes to demonstrate his power and goodness to you through your weaknesses. Paul learned a lesson and he put it this way. He said, "Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong." You need to move toward strength in your Christian life, but the paradox is that you move towards strength through your weaknesses. Well, what does the world have to say about weakness? Never let them see your weakness. Why? Because your opponents might exploit your weakness to gain an advantage over you. You have been taught all your life to cover up your weaknesses. You have been trained to be embarrassed about your weakness, so you don't admit your weaknesses to anyone. Or there's this. The world says, take your weaknesses and just redefine them as strengths. If you eat too much and you don't exercise enough, then just be body positive. Don't let other people body shame you. Or If you're uncomfortable because you don't feel boyish enough around other boys, just start thinking of yourself as a girl. It's always the same approach with the world. Don't address your weaknesses. Just change definitions so that your weaknesses don't count anymore as weaknesses. But the wonderful beauty of the gospel of Jesus is this. We don't have to hide our weaknesses or pretend they're not there. The gospel actually starts with, admit your weakness. You are sinful, just like everybody else. And your weakness as a sinful human being actually keeps you separated from God. You cannot do enough or be enough to make yourself worthy of God's acceptance. But do not stay in your weakness. Let your weakness take you to the power of Christ. Your sinfulness means you need Jesus to save you through his finished work on the cross. And now, if you are a Christian, the more you accept your own weaknesses, the more Christ is freed to glorify himself through you. And that's why back in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verses 1 through 5, Paul was able to write this. He said, "And I, when I came to you, brothers, did not come proclaiming to you the testimony of God with lofty speech or wisdom. For I decided to know nothing among you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And I was with you in weakness and in fear and in much trembling. And my speech and my message were not in plausible words of wisdom, but in demonstration of the Spirit and of power, that your faith might not rest in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God." So apparently Paul was a fantastic writer, but he was somewhat unimpressive as a speaker. So when people accepted the gospel of Christ through his weak speaking abilities, God got all the glory and not Paul. So when God gets all the glory, all the pressure comes off of you to perform well. So my encouragement to you as we start this new year is make an UnResolution with me. Admit that you are weak and be okay with that. Just let your weakness lead you to the greater trust in Christ's power. Because when you are weak, then you are strong in Christ.